just attack, he suffocates his opponents with pressure, making them fight on his terms. He's a master of the fundamentals with rock-solid defense, devastating combinations, and a relentless pace that breaks his opponents mentally and physically. But what makes Rodtang's style so effective? And how do you incorporate his technique into your own game? Let's break it down. Rodtang's game revolves around one thing: constant and relentless pressure. He doesn't just wait, he dictates. He doesn't just walk forward aimlessly, although it may seem like it. Every step, every feint, every strike is designed to trap his opponents and force them into uncomfortable exchanges. He applies pressure in waves using his stance, footwork setups to keep his opponent on the back foot. So, a quick lesson: if you want to fight like Rodtang, you need to develop a strong base in footwork, defense, and pressure fighting. Learn to read your opponent's patterns and break them down round by round. So, a suggestion for a drill would be to practice forward pressure in sparring. Restrict yourself from moving backwards and focus on cutting off your opponent's movements while maintaining a tight, high guard. So let's take a look at Rodtang's stance. Rodtang's stance changes depending on whether or not he's pressuring or defending. If you look at a lot of his fights in the early round, he has a narrow stance with weight heavy on his back foot. If you look at Rodtang's fight with Jacob Smith in 169, Rodtang comes out with a narrow back foot heavy stance compared to Jacob's stance, which is more 50-50. But in later rounds, when he picks up the pace, he's heavier on his front foot, although he still opted for a back foot heavy stance at times. You can see the same thing in his fight with Superlek. He starts off back foot heavy, but if you look at him in the third round, he becomes more front foot heavy. The same thing happens in his fights with Haggerty. If you go and watch his fights, you can see countless other examples of this. In order to defend, he uses a slight lean back to evade punches while staying in range to counter. If you watch his fight with Sergio Wilson, you can see him do it off the bat in the first round. You can see him do it in his first fight with Jonathan Haggerty as well, except with Haggerty, he does get caught when he's trying to lean back because Haggerty is the rangier fighter in this situation. When he's in the later rounds, he becomes more aggressive. He shifts his weight forward, stepping in with power shots and relentless forward movement. He uses his narrow stance to make himself harder to hit while setting up counters. The back foot heavy stance makes it easier to check kicks, lean out of range, and counter with teeps, and low kick his opponents as they step in. So what you can take from this is that you can practice shifting your weight fluidly between defense and offense. Stay light enough to react, but solid enough to absorb and counter efficiently. So in order to do this, you can do a shadow boxing drill. You can switch between a back foot heavy stance and a aggressive forward stance, focusing on defensive and offensive movement when you're shadow boxing. So you can have rounds where you're focusing more on the back foot, being on the back foot and being defensive, imagining that your opponent is throwing shots at you and you're trying to counter, but you're not trying to give up too much space. And other rounds when you're trying to be more aggressive and you're boxing on the front foot, you want to only move forward and move laterally, but never backwards. Now let's take a look at his footwork. Rodtang doesn't just move forward, but he controls the ring. He has excellent ring generalship. Rather than chasing his opponent, he cuts off the ring by stepping laterally and staying in front and forcing them into a corner where they have no choice but to trade. And this is where he thrives. Alright, here's an example from Rodtang's second fight with Jonathan Haggerty. In the third round, when he's starting to put on the forward pressure, he then proceeds to cut Haggerty off. Every time Haggerty tries to step off, Rodtang is always face to face with him. He never gives him any room to breathe, and he's constantly applying forward pressure. Everywhere Haggerty moves, Rodtang steps with him, and he does this until he gets Haggerty into the corner, releasing a barrage of punches, eventually knocking him down. So what you can take from this is that you don't just follow your opponent, anticipate where they'll go, and then block their exits. Use jabs and hooks and roundhouse kicks to force them into bad positions. So in order to draw this, a practical or actionable step that you can do is to have a partner try to circle away while you work on cutting off their movement using lateral footwork and controlled aggression. Although it may seem like it, Rodtang's offense isn't reckless, it's very calculated. He uses subtle level changes before attacking. He uses throwaway shots to bait reactions and create openings. He uses roundhouse kicks and hooks to manipulate his opponent's positioning. He uses leg kicks and teeps to disrupt rhythm and control the range. Lesson. So if you want to fight more like Rodtang or take away something from his game, you need to master feints and throwaway shots. They create hesitation and give you openings to land big shots. So a suggestion for a drill that you can do for this is to throw feints on a bag before landing power shots. Experiment with faking teeps or jabs to draw reactions. Here you can see a simple but effective setup in his fight versus Sergio Williams. When Rodtang fakes the teep, Sergio bites on the feint by reaching out with his rear hand and he gets caught with a left hook. Another example of some of the aforementioned setups is in his fight with Daniel Williams, where he uses a throwaway shot or possibly an arm trap to manipulate Daniel Williams' guard to catch him with the right hand as he circles off. In his fight with Daniel Williams, we see Daniel circling off and getting caught with an inside leg kick as well. You can see him use throwaway shots once again in this fight. When he's got Daniel on the cage, he'll throw a right hook to bring his guard down to catch him straight down the pipe with the left hand. Rodtang's offense is a mix of calculated aggression and sharp fundamentals. He'll often use the left hook to counter and control hand positioning, as well as set up body shots. He uses body kicks paired with hooks to cut his opponent's movement off. And he likes to step in with power shots. He'll take one to land one, because he knows that he is the more durable of the two. He'll use the left hook to keep his opponents from circling away if they step off to his left. So, from these examples, you can see that Rodtang doesn't just throw, he guides his opponent into his shots and cuts off their movement. The left hook is key in both his offense and his counters. So in order to implement this into your game, you can work on landing the left hook followed by a body shot and low kick, mimicking Rodtang's setups. Rodtang's chin is absolutely legendary, and his durability is insane. But it's not just about toughness, his defense is also solid. He'll use subtle head movements when needed, and he can also block effectively using a tight guard. But when he needs to, he'll absorb shots strategically and land counters. While Rodtang's durability is insane, he still relies on a good defense. His tight guard and calculated risk-taking make him hard to put away. So a key lesson for this: do not rely on toughness alone, but build a strong guard and develop defensive awareness. Rodtang's insane pace is a result of world-class conditioning. He likes to force his opponents to fight at a pace that they simply cannot sustain. His conditioning is one of the biggest weapons. So if you want to train your gas tank, do HIIT, road work, and sparring that mimics fight intensity. The goal is to outlast and outwork your opponent. So a drill suggestion that I have for you is to do high intensity heavy bag rounds, 3-minute rounds of continuous striking to build endurance. Now, one of the biggest reasons why his opponents are so hesitant to engage with him is because of his use of mental warfare. When he gets hit, he'll often taunt opponents to frustrate them, and he'll never show weakness. He'll use mind games to break his opponent's confidence. So mental toughness is a skill. When you're under heat or pressure, make sure that you stay composed and make your opponent doubt themselves. So there you have it. Rodtang style is built on relentless pressure, sharp fundamentals, and an unbreakable mindset. Train smart, apply these lessons, and start implementing them in your own game.